other one is here, so and up. So
I saw that.
all good, yeah,
I
all
heard,
good.
actually, I heard. I didn't see, but I heard.
Yeah, she's
But
floating around.
hello, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Coffee Time with Byron. I'm your host, Byron. This is episode number 56. We are broadcasting live on YouTube and available next day on all available podcasts, Apple, Google, Spotify, you name it, etc. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and where I was able to hook up with this guy, former NHL enforcer with the Phillies, Riley Cote, and host of his own podcast, Nasty Knuckles. How are you doing today? Thank you for joining tonight.
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me.
So let's get started. I want to get started actually promoting your podcast. Tell us about it. Where can it be seen? Who do you interview, and how long does an episode normally last?
Yeah, sure. So Nasty Knuckles is the name of the podcast. It's with one of my good buddies, Derek Settlemeyer. He's formerly the equipment manager of the Philadelphia Flyers, and with my background of playing for the Philadelphia Flyers, we decided to create hockey, obviously a hockey podcast, but more of a Philadelphia Flyers centric podcast. And we're 50 episodes deep, and I think all but maybe two of the guests were former Flyers or current Philadelphia Flyers.
Mm-hmm.
So, but not that we're opposed to broadening out. I think eventually we will. We just wanted to start in this area and connect with the Flyers alumni and the guys that we know on the team. And yeah, usually between an hour and a hook, an episode. Sometimes they drag a little bit longer. But yeah, man, just trying to humanize hockey players and athletes, and just trying to see it, show the world a different side of them, because I think most people see them in like traditional interviews, and it's just like asking about the game and this and that, and these guys are human, so just talking about past experience as well as sharing stories, both from guys that we played with and or Nasty would have had around him while he was equipment manager, and then just kind of just having some fun with it. So it's been fun. Yeah, it's been good. 50 episodes deep now.
Now, did you know that after you retired, this is what you wanted to do, or did you want to get into something involved in the game itself after you retired?
Well, I definitely didn't have this on the map when I retired. It was 2010 when I retired from playing. So I don't think podcasting was necessarily necessarily a huge thing at the time. It probably was. I just wasn't aware of it. But it's certainly not like it is right now, where
Yeah,
everyone and their
today.
brother podcast. So
Right.
I got into hockey when I first retired by coaching. So that was my connection to the game. But I guess it was 3 or 4 years ago, I got out of coaching corporate sports, and I realized that if I didn't have a podcast of some sort, it's almost like it would almost be foolish, at least not to try. With all my connections and contacts within the sport, I mean, it seemed to be a somewhat simple thing to do. I know it's a lot of work, but really chasing after people to get them locked down for being a guest. And early on, I was producing this stuff myself. My roadcaster and just my basic abilities with Final Cut and all that stuff. So I realized we could at least put it off, make it coming off the ground, and get some sponsors to start lightly, and eventually pass it over the production to somebody else. But yeah, so I never had this vision of it, but then as I realized how powerful digital media is, and social media, and and trying to push things through, and then above and beyond that, it wasn't just to like reconnect back to hockey and stay in the game. It was somewhat of a marketing play for some of my other businesses, and getting in front of some guys and talking about certain things, right? I mean, if you listen to our podcast, we land up talking about alternative medicine and stuff like that, cannabis, hemp, cannabinoids, as alternatives to opioids, performance stuff. So that's totally in line with some of the business stuff that I have going on, which is, it's great to talk to professional athletes about that stuff, which is, you know, pretty
Right.
interesting. Yeah. So a little bit of everything, but it's working itself out, I guess.
I feel your pain because as we talked about before we got on air, yeah, I'm having the same issue that you did at the beginning of just doing it all myself. It's hard, like trying to share it out there, and you don't know anybody. I mean, it's tough, like you said. But once you get the sponsors, which is even tougher to get, are you basically getting paid by the sponsors to sponsor your podcast? Because I think you are with DraftKings, correct?
Yeah, we were with DraftKings, and then we're with a different bookie now. It's called MyBookie, mybookie.com.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, a few other ones, hockey stick stuff, and it's a lot of the stuff is outside of the actual podcast itself that we do, like the hockey stick. We do a lot of community hockey games, and played in different alumni games. For example, we played in the Flyers alumni game last week where I used the stick, Toby Hockey. They're one of our sponsors, but like so the sponsorship goes outside of just the actual audio or visual podcast. It's like it's content through the channels and stuff like that, and getting the sticks into other guys' hands, and so there's like kind of like this. There's like the bigger vision of just like the podcast is like more of a, I say more of a brand. Like we put on events, like we had a ball hockey tournament, so it's like the Nasty Knuckles podcast is more a brand. So that's what we're trying to build really here. We started like a secondary type of show where it's like shorter version, more like I guess analysis of the games versus
Mm-hmm.
just like you and I just talking. You know what I mean? Talking about our hockey careers and whatever else, blah blah blah, and stories and all that
Right,
stuff.
right.
Remember, it's just like old Gary V and just like putting content out there and be more of a brand than just a podcast per se, right? Because there's stuff you can do outside of just the digital, like again the community events, all that good stuff. That's what we're trying to do. So it takes time. It's so much, so much effort. This is like a side hustle for me. You know what I mean? Like this is like I got like 10 other things going on. So I'm trying to squeeze this in, but I think this is important to squeeze in because I stay in the game somehow, and I stay in
Yeah,
the game with like
right,
professional, legitimate humans,
right.
playing and retired that have, Hall of Famers and Stanley Cup winners and, highly successful people. So it's important to, to surround myself with those people, and just, and talk about the things that I'm actually doing outside the podcast, which again, it's like serving its purpose as like I don't want to call it free marketing because it's my time and it's not free, but it serves itself as marketing as along with being something that I enjoy doing and and having some fun with. So
So, like you said, you spent a total of 10 years playing professional hockey, 8 in the NHL, and you got like I said at the beginning, introducing you, you got the entitled, the enforcer. For those watching, I know what an enforcer is, but for those watching right now on YouTube and will be hearing it on podcast, what is exactly your role as an enforcer, and what gives you that name?
well, the role of the enforcer doesn't really exist anymore in hockey. There still is fighting, but the designated quote unquote enforcer, there may be two or three guys around the league that you could actually call them that, just because they're kind of grandfathered in as they weaned out the rest of them, and it's gone more highly skilled, which I'm not opposed to, but I really feel like the role itself is about accountability and self policing, and it's a powerful energy that kind of controls, and supports guys and teams getting out of line. So that's why the tough guys there. The enforcer role is essentially, a hired player that protects his teammates and fights and puts his body on the line for the better good of the team. And several different reasons. One is protecting your star players, cheap shots, things that happen within the game that need to be addressed. Secondary, just energy creation. If the team's down a goal or two, you need a spark of some sort. You can go get a big hit. A fight usually charges up the crowd, so there's some strategy there. And yeah, and I guess at the end of the day, it's keeping the peace. People act a certain way, when there's no accountability, they act a different way when there's accountability. It's psychology 101, and I've lived it, even say for
Mhm.
myself. When other tough guys weren't in the lineup, I acted a little bit differently, played a little bit, more aggressively because I knew that I didn't have to fight the toughest guy. I had to fight maybe the second or third toughest guy. So it gave me a little bit extra boost, I guess you could say. But yeah, and the enforcer role, you went from the evolution of hockey from like back in the Flyers' early days of the Broad Street Bullies. They had several years known as the Broad Street Bullies, where they just like out competed, not just hockey wise, but like toughness wise. They're just tougher. You know what I mean? They're just like, I guess, bullied the other teams around. Eventually, every other team started to find tough players. So then hockey was a pretty legitimately tough sport always, right? There was not just hits, not just fighting for a puck with no helmets back in the day, and then eventually helmets. But then there's this element of fighting, which is a different dimension of thinking because now it's like, you got grown men battling for pucks, strong guys that some guys cross the line, elbows get up, shoulders get up. And if you just let that stuff happen, and especially your go-to guys, your star players, you're losing them for periods of time, and you're sacrificing your season a lot of times if these guys are on the bench or on the sidelines because they can't play. So yeah, the roles evolved out of the game from the Broad Street Bullies to the current game, which is obviously a lot more skill, which is fine, but the speed of the game, guys are bigger, faster, stronger than they've ever been. So naturally, there could be accidental cheap shots, but nonetheless, if there's no one there to self police and keep guys like on that edge, guys sometimes cross the line, and there's actually more concussions now than there was when there was fighting, and that was the reason why they're taking out fighting was for concussion reasons. They're limiting concussions,
Mm.
but uh, the numbers work against that theory because there's less cheap shots when there's accountability. The guys that are tough and the warriors kind of go at it and take the punches, but the other guys, they don't get hit in the head as much. Not as many cheap shots. So I don't love the way the game's gone, but who am I? But yeah, the role of the enforcers say is in virtually extinct.
Do you think uh, fighting in the game actually helps the game? Like, if I know it hardly happens nowadays like it did in your time, but when it does happen, do you think it helps the game or hurts the game the way they want to do it?
Well, I thought it helped the game. I don't think it needs to happen all the time. I think the whole beautiful part of it is a timing element. I'm not suggesting the puck drops every game and there's fights right off the bat. I'm not suggesting that,
Hmm.
but having a guy on the team that's recognized as the enforcer certainly gives their own team confidence or a little bit more confidence knowing they have this guy in the lineup. But it also plays an effect on the opposition, like knowing there's another guy in the lineup that if you do something silly or you poke the goalie or you know what I mean, you accidentally run over somebody, that you're gonna have to pay a price. And the
Hmm.
price you have to fight the tough guy. It's called answering the bell, right? I mean, if you want to play hard, go play hard. If you want to cross that line, well, then expect to answer the bell. Well, now there's no answering of the bell, so guys cross the line, and what do? They ride the line and expect the referee to police the game perfectly, which never happens. The referee misses a lot of stuff, and then you go in special teams. So there's this battle of special teams versus like actually, believe it or not, it's like the art of war. Like, two tough guys come to battle. There's an actual legitimate mutual respect that's bred between the tough guys, and then the rest of their group of players, where there's like, okay, they fought. Let's just like play the game now. There's some peace that was bred here temporarily. But as soon as you have like cheap shots and stuff that goes unrecognized by maybe the refs sometimes, and then the players got to deal with it, and there's frustration built up. If you're not able to self-police, then games get out of hand. You've seen it several times. There was a game last year between the Washington Capitals and the New York Rangers, and Washington Capitals have this guy that is, we say, one of the tougher guys, Tom Wilson, that are on the league. He wouldn't have been a heavyweight when I played, but he's probably close to a heavyweight in this in tough. Well, he
Yeah.
lands up he lands up grabbing the leading goal scorer of the New York Rangers, Panarin, and like grabbed them, choked them, and part of it was that Panarin went after him because he kind of was around the goalie, but nonetheless he's protecting himself, grabs this skill guy and pins him and slams him, big choke slams him on the ground. Well, Panarin gets hurt, and it was like right at the end of the season, and their playoffs are on the line, so now they missed their leading goal scorer, Tom Wilson, who was the toughest guy in the Washington Capitals and probably on the East Coast here. Um, what else is he going to do? But he had no one to answer to, so he gets away with like choke slamming star player for the Rangers, and nothing
Yeah.
happened. So what does the Rangers do in the offseason? They go and sign the toughest guy in the league, Ryan Reeves, who was in Vegas last year. Now the Rangers got Ryan Reeves.
Mm.
They're going to basically say like that's never going to happen again. Our star player is never going to ever have that happen. But this thinking is like it's not new age thinking. Like that's like an old school move by the Rangers. But like back in the day, everyone thought that way. It's like Ed Snyder back in the day, the owner of the Flyers. Like they got pushed around, I think in St. Louis or something, way back in the 70s. And he comes back to
Mm.
Philly. We're never going to get pushed around again. So he goes and gets the Bills the toughest team. I understand it's never going to be like that, but like like there was an example a, of a goal scorer getting abused by someone tough, and then there's no accountability. Where like it landed up ruining the Rangers' season. He was out, they didn't make playoffs, and it was like a significant thing. So I know the and I've evolved my thinking from being an idiot. Like I was fighting 30, 35 times a year. I know that's not realistic.
Yeah.
And I've evolved my thinking into what I would think is like reasonable thinking if you understand hockey and the amount of energy and testosterone in hockey that fighting at some degree should still always remain in the game because it does somewhat keep the peace. It does. There's a respect that's somehow bred out of it. I know it sounds crazy, but it's just two men battling it out and then basically bowing out to each other, tap each other on the butt. Say, good job. I respect you for fighting me, and vice versa, and answering the bell, whatever it lands up being. So, but yeah, it's I have a hard time watching the game now, not because of the amount of fights, yeah, and and it could be part of it, but it's just like the amount of just like true raw like trying to be tougher than their team. You don't really see that anymore. It's just so skilled now.
Now you went undrafted. What? How did that go? Did you think you were going to be drafted? Did you not get scouted? How much difficulty did you have getting into the league being undrafted? And who originally scouted you and signed you?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I was never drafted. I did expect to get drafted. I had an agent um, that misplayed me in my draft year, so I was like ranked in this central scouting thing. Like I think like late sixth round, early seventh round, something like that. So later in the draft, but
Mm.
nonetheless drafted and foot in the door in an organization. So it turns out I never get drafted, and I call him up and ask him like, "What the hell happened? Like, how did I get ranked like that and then just not get drafted?" He's like, "Well, it sometimes happen," but he's like, "I also sent out a memo to all NHL teams saying if you're not going to draft them before the sixth round, then not to draft them at all." Because he's like, "I think it'd be more beneficial if you were a free agent." I'm like, "Well, isn't that something that you probably want to tell your client before you go and do that?" But nonetheless, that's what he landed up doing. I landed up firing him after that because I was so pissed off about what had happened. But that being said, you know there was now 30 teams that could potentially be interested in me, but as long as I performed and got noticed. So I was still in
Right.
junior hockey when I didn't get drafted, so I still hadn't got to the point where I took on the role of the enforcer. So I was still actually playing to be like a regular, whatever you want to call them, goal scorer grinder, something like someone in that world. But then when I turned 20, went to Toronto Maple Leafs training camp, and I had the option to go back to junior for another year or turn pro in one way, shape, or form. Whether it was the lowest league, which I landed up in the Central Hockey League, East Coast American League, or NHL. But I knew that NHL wasn't realistic, being 20 and undrafted. But nonetheless, that was when I decided to take on the role of the enforcer. So I went to Toronto Maple Leafs camp to fight everybody and their brother, the biggest guy, the guy with most penalty minutes. Like I pretty much did my whole pro career. So
Yep.
that's what I did. I went ran a guy first shift, got in a fight my first shift in Toronto Maple Leafs camp, and that was like the starting of me taking on this role of the enforcer. So I think for me it was like finding an identity, and I wasn't drafted. I was looking at the guys getting called up, lots of goals and lots of penalty minutes. So I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to get a lot of goals because any team I go on, I'm going to have to start right at the bottom. Like I'm going to be like that 13th forward. I'm not going to get a whole lot of ice time. So like the easiest way to get noticed is to go out and be physical, right? Go hit guys, go poke the
Mhm.
goalie, be an idiot, fight. So that's what I decided to do. And so my path wasn't easy. I had to reconfigure the path. You had to put like the realism of or the lack of realism of me um, making the NHL as a goal scorer aside, and be honest with like my skill level versus some of the best players in the world. So decided to try and be a goon instead.
So in 04-05 with the AHL Philadelphia Phantoms, you win the Calder Cup as a team.
Yep.
Take us through that year. What do you remember about that year? And did you know you guys at the beginning of the year were going to win win that title? Because if I can recall, you guys had some good players on that team.
Yeah, we did have some really good players on that team. So interesting story on that. I started off the year in the Central Hockey League. I was there for 4 days, and I got a phone call from Ron Hextall, who was the assistant general manager of the Flyers at the time, Phantoms at the time, and I signed a 25 game tryout, and this was like the second game in the AHL that year, and there was a lockout year, 0405,
Mhm.
right? The NHL
Yep.
wasn't going on.
Yep. Yep.
So signed 25 game PTO. Long story short is land up signing 4 PTOs, and we win the Calder Cup. But I didn't realize like the amount of talent we had on the team till probably the second 25 game professional tryout, realizing how good of a team we actually had. And that's when I knew that the team was special. Probably again 25, 30 games in, that the team was special. That obviously every team had a lot of NHL guys because the NHL wasn't going on, but
Right.
but just the chemistry of the team, there was an energy that I can't really describe. That was like you almost know you're going to win. But it was arguably one of the best seasons of my whole entire hockey career.
Now I
Even
saw the
before.
picture of you. I saw the picture of you holding that cup. How heavy is that cup compared, do you think, to the Stanley Cup? I know, unfortunately, you never got to hold it, but
We still had
how
some weight to it. Probably a little bit lighter, but it had some weight to it.
got some weight to
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
Do you do like what the hockey players do, the NHLers do with the stand? Did you sleep with the cup
I
like
never,
what
s-
they do?
I never slept with it. I just drank out of it, smoked some weed out of it, but I never slept with it. If I won the Stanley Cup, I probably would have.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, okay, there you go.
yeah.
So after that year when you won that cup, you participate in the Philadelphia Flyers training camp in the '05 and '06. Then you were signed to a two-way contract by them. What exactly is a two-way contract? For those who don't know at home, what exactly is that?
A two-way contract basically means that you have one salary with the main club, which is the Flyers, and then you have another salary with the American League team or the minor league team.
Mhm.
So they send you down. The pay structure changes. If you're on a one-way contract, you can get sent down to the minor leagues, but you're still getting paid NHL money. If that makes any
Mhm.
sense, right?
Mhm.
So it's a team's way of of saving, I guess, saving money and staying under the salary cap. But if the guy gets sent down to the minors and he's only making 80,000 versus 500,000, that money's not on the cap anyways. But the one-way contract would stay on the salary cap. So yeah, so basically, yeah, two-way means you have two different salaries for major leagues versus minor leagues. One-way contract means that the salary remains the same. Even if they send you to the bottom league ever, you still get paid the NHL amount of money. They're still under contract till however that expires, and then you're not on the hook for their salary anymore. But usually, if you're on a one-way contract, your salary remains on the salary cap versus a two-way contract. Your salary does not go up against the salary cap.
And like you said, that is weird, but it doesn't make sense. That's totally weird, especially if you get called down. That is weird how they do that.
The goal is that you want a one-way contract. So it's like a guaranteed money, right? So if you shit the bed or you get hurt or whatever, they send you down, you still get paid NHL money. So the goal is always one-way contracts. Two-way, you're not gonna complain. There's a lot of guys on two-ways, but the pay structure changes significantly on a two-way. So it's not guaranteed, major league money basically.
So you make your debut March 24th, 2007 with the Flyers. Two-part question. Do you remember who you debuted against? It was a rival team you debuted against, and were you nervous at all, anxious at all to make your debut?
I think it was Carolina Hurricanes. Maybe I'm wrong. That was maybe the second game. Maybe the New Jersey Devils. I can't remember. But yeah, I mean, I was extremely excited and nervous all at the same time. I think it was more excitement than nerves. It was just like the nerves were just like, let's go. You know what I mean? And get after it. But I do remember getting the call up because I was at the skate zone, and the call up was not on a phone. It was like John Stevens, the head coach of the Phantoms at the time, basically saying, no, actually, no, it wasn't Johnny. It was Sammy. Go and talk to Homer, and Paul Homer was the general manager at the time, and I knew what the call was for because the day before, the other tough guy for the Flyers, Todd Fedora, got knocked out in a fight by Colt Noor. So I knew that this call, me going up there, was that I was getting called up. So the energy was already like rolling through me. And then sure enough, he's like, Rouse, he's like, get called up, do your thing, and have some fun. That was like the end of the conversation. So I honestly forget the first game. But I know my mentality was like, let's go find some fights and kick some ass. I tried. I think I only fight in the first 8 games, but
the team you guys faced was your bitter rivals, the New York Rangers.
Oh, it was the Rangers, wasn't it?
Yep. New York Rangers. Your bitter rivals. I'm sure. What can you say about okay, you were in a division where all the teams hated each other in your division.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm sure you enjoyed that, especially your role as an enforcer. You enjoyed fighting those guys, didn't you?
Well, it made the games more interesting. I knew every time that we played those teams, it was always going to be a battle, right? And they always had back then. They had some serious tough guys. All the teams, you know what I mean. Like there was no easy nights in those games. Pittsburgh Penguins had George LaRock or Eric Goddard, and the Devils had Cam Jansen or Aaron Asham or Mike Rupp, and then there's the Rangers, Colt Noor, Donald Brashear. I mean Jason Strudwick. It didn't matter who I was going to play. I was fighting some big ass dudes. But the rivalries themselves, outside of the fighting and the tough guys, were significant. Mainly the Pittsburgh Penguins. I feel like that one, and the Devils. All of them were, but the Pittsburgh Penguins, I think, was in a different category of rival. But always a battle. No, there's no nights off there.
So the following year in 07, you get suspended for 3 games for your headshot to Dallas Stars Matt Niskanen in the third period. Do you feel that to this day that you deserve that suspension after that?
Probably, yeah. I charged at him from the blue line and elbowed him. I probably should have got more. I think if it happened like in this day and age, not that it was that long ago, but it's still 14 years ago. I think I would have gotten 5 games at least. You there?
I hate when it does this. This has happened a couple times now. I need a new computer. Sorry. But you were saying. You were saying. Do you remember what you were saying? Continue where you were at.
Yeah, I actually finished my thought right at the end there. It was just but there was no easy nights. Every night was a battle between the tough guys and within the team themselves.
So then you became the fifth Flyers player to receive a suspension during that season, alongside your teammates Downey. I don't. How do I say it? But Jesse Boucher. Is that how you say
Jesse
it?
Bowlery, Jesse
Okay.
Bowlery, yeah.
Randy Jones and Scott Hartnell, who are all good players in their own right. Really, you guys had you on your team. All you guys had that many suspensions in that
Yeah,
season.
throughout the season, yeah, it started off. Steve Downey got a 25-game suspension in preseason, and then 3 games in
Jeez.
the season, Jesse Bowlery's got a 20-game suspension for cross-checking someone in the face, and then I think it was I can't remember if I was the third or fourth, and then I can't remember what Hartnell did and Randy Jones did, but it was all throughout the season. But yeah, there was there was a lot of suspensions that year.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Oh yeah, what I was saying before is the 3 games was what I got, but in this era, I probably got a minimum of 5 games for that hit. So
Probably, yeah, you would have.
I definitely deserved it because I ran the guy from the blue line. But yeah, right now they would have targeted me big time because it was a deliberate headshot.
So let's see if you remember this. February 17th, 2008, you scored your only NHL goal on who? He's still playing to this day and with the
I
same
should
team.
remember this. I should remember this.
Mm-hmm.
Ed Belfour.
Close.
Yeah. No, Carey Price. I remember this one.
I know you were joking. I knew you knew.
Yeah. It was unfortunate that the game was kind of out of hand. I think it was 5-1. I still ended up scoring the second goal of the game. Nothing really to celebrate about, but I scored against one of the best goalies in the world, so I'll take it.
That
Yeah.
seems hard to believe. In all your time in the NHL, you only have one goal. That seems hard to believe.
Yeah. I was too busy trying to fight guys.
Too many
Spent
racking
a
up
lot
the
of time
penalty
chasing
minutes,
them
huh?
puck. Oh yeah.
Right? And
Yeah, I was a
getting those
little
suspensions.
bit distracted with fighting and hitting, and I had a hard time finding the balance of actually playing hockey and playing the enforcer because I didn't grow up being an enforcer, So it was like the way I'm wired is like I just gotta like go all in on whatever I'm doing. That was
Now, if you
it.
really
So
have wanted to, could you have scored more goals if you really wanted to?
I look back on my career again. If I was like if I would have been smarter with my training and smarter with my mindset, um, I definitely could have. I was just again consumed by the role where I just like would drink so much coffee and eat so much Sudafed and whatever else I can get my hands on before games just to go basically to go to war. You know what I mean? I was prepared to fight every night and I would fight every other night. Like it was like so it's hard to like go and relax and play a creative sport when you're in this mindset. So I grew up. If you look at my numbers growing up, like I was drafted in the Western Hockey League in the second round. I had 28 goals my best year, my third year in juniors. Like over 50 points. But I wasn't a fighter. You know what I mean? I wasn't spending my energy and focus and mindset on like going after the tough guy. It's like I know there's tough guys that I've scored a few more goals than one, but like I, for me, I just like I could not play hockey and do that at the same time. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
like I have to pick one or the other because I knew I was only getting like 5 to 7 minutes of ice time, and I was like, okay, well, I just felt in my mind that I needed to always prove myself. So always felt like I needed to fight because I just always felt like someone was trying to take my job, or there was always someone taking the job, but I just never
Right.
had that comfort and luxury of being like, oh, I got a cushion here, I can just like relax for a bit. Like I just never felt that way. So again, like I was just like I trained to fight. watch videos and fight. I take jiu-jitsu and Greco stand-up wrestling and the whole bit. You know what I mean? I was all in on the fight. So um, but if there was one thing I could have changed, it could change and go back in time. I'm just not sure if it would have made me like the Riley Cote that like uh, the way that I had created that identity for, and probably in a better way. You know what I mean? I'd have been more versatile, and I just wouldn't have been more. I wouldn't have been so much a goon than I kind of created. But shoulda, woulda, coulda. I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about how to take care of myself in the process. And
Mm,
like I could give two shits about it. You know, what I mean, I lived my childhood dream. I fucking got one NHL goal. I got
right,
75 NHL fights, over 200 pro hockey fights. Like I lived hard. I learned a lot. Good experience. And I wouldn't be where I am today if I would have taken it soft and
right,
taken that easier path. I would have, but who knows? That would have been the wiser. That would have been the wiser path. If I was to coach somebody or teach my children in the situation I was in, I would have definitely guided them a different way, a smarter way, or a more sustainable way. But I didn't have the resources to figure that out, and I did after the fact, and it was everything. Everything was worked out the way it's supposed to. It's funny how the universe works a lot of times. Kind of teaches you some lessons, and then you gotta
yeah.
go and take those lessons and march along and do the good work somewhere else. So that's where I'm at.
So you only ended up playing 15 games in your 09-010 season with the Flyers. You retired on August 9th of 2010 that year. Uh, did you know your career was over, or did you still kind of felt like you wanted to play?
You know what? Going into that season, I would never thought I was going to be retiring at the end of the season. But it was just a mixture of physical issues with the body, fighting all the time, grinding the body that hard, training that hard to sustain that another season. I had another one-way contract on with the Flyers, and I ended up turning that in. But going into that last season, yeah, some physical injuries, some concussion-related issues, the brain stuff, like actual legitimate brain stuff, and then probably some mental health stuff. I was going through divorce. There's some personal issues.
Mm,
Uh, I wasn't. There's some spiritual issues as far as not being overly fulfilled with what I was doing. You know what I mean? It's a grind. Fighting like that, as you can imagine. Preparing your mind every day to fight, like where is hard on you and hard on you emotionally and spiritually. So all these things combined made it, I guess, somewhat of an easy decision for me to retire. I got into some coaching with the minor league team, with the Phantoms, actually, with the Flyers minor league team. So I was able to stay in the game, but I landed up turning my last year a one-way contract. I mean, that's NHL money into a coaching deal, and got out of playing at 28 2010 because I think I was the easiest way to describe it is mentally exhausted. I was just like
mm. And I
I
don't
just
blame
wanted
you.
something else in my life.
I
The
don't blame you.
the pressure of fighting, the pressure of the anxiety of fighting. It's like chronic state of anxiety. It's hard to explain, but I wanted the hell out of that. So that was kind of
I
it.
don't blame
So
you.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a lot,
glad I did.
especially on your toll.
I'm
Especially
glad I
when
did.
you,
It's like you look at some of the athletes now. Some of these people are pulling the plug because of mental health issues. Like it's like if it doesn't feel right and it's not serving your happiness and fulfillment in life, like you're on the wrong path. And that's where I was at. You know what I mean? It's like I couldn't fight any harder. I couldn't grind any harder. I couldn't party any harder. I needed to like stop. I needed to slow down and start worrying about self preservation. So that's what I decided to do.
now, out of today's players, and let's talk a little today of today's hockey. And and if your career, if you were still playing to this day, say if you were playing to this day, I know you'd still be in the enforcer role. They would try to get you out of that role, of course, obviously. But who would you want to fight today? And who would you want to fight?
I mean, based on like just wanting to fight the toughest guy just to say the fight the toughest guy, or actually
Yes,
fight a guy that I actually want to beat the pants off because of the way he's acting.
yes, both. two-way street.
Well,
Yeah, go.
I would do what I did when I played. Would just find the toughest guy in their team. That'd be easy one. Ryan Reeves plays for this guy I was talking about earlier with the
Mhm.
New York Rangers. Who else? Well, I've tried to fight Chara. I never actually fought Chara, but he doesn't fight a whole lot. But he's 6'7", 260 pounds. Go after Chara probably. Who else is there? There's McDermott in Colorado, big tough guy, younger guy. Go after him. And then guys that I would actually want to beat the pants off. There's one in Boston that I would never get my hands on because there should be an enforcer to protect him. But that
I think I know who you're talking about. The Rat.
Marchand,
Yeah,
yeah,
the
Panarin,
Rat.
was doing some shit again the other day with Panarin. Panarin threw a
Yeah.
glove at him. I don't know if you saw that. But just like he's licking, that's stuff I'm talking about. He licks people and gets away with some funky stuff that would never go down. Like disrespect. Like if someone licks you, you should be allowed to punch someone in the face. If
I agree. That is it.
Disrespectful. What are we doing here? Like that
Yeah.
And then the NHL didn't even penalize him for it. So that's the stuff I'm talking about. But he would be the top of the list for sure. Who else? There's probably a couple other little ratty players, but yeah, he comes to mind right out of the gates.
What about the two faces of the league, Ovechkin and Crosby? They're in your division.
What about McDavid?
Huh?
What about Connor McDavid?
That's another one. Yeah, I can see that.
He's almost up there with those two. I think he might be overshadowing Crosby right now, honestly. This is a current day supreme player. Find one better than McDavid, more exciting than McDavid. This guy scores every single night.
Oh yes, he does.
2 points a game every single day.
Yeah.
I mean, and incredible speed. So to me, it's if you want to say Crosby and Ovechkin, I think McDavid's right in there. If not, he's probably brought more excitement than maybe those other two, even though Ovechkin's still scoring goals. The excitement level of Connor McDavid's insane. You know what I mean? I just tune into the highlights just to see him and see what kind of crazy shit he's pulling off because he's that good.
Now, is there a player out of all the fights that you had in your career, was there one that you remember the most that you just didn't like the player at all?
Not really. There was peace with all of them. There's a couple times in preseason with David Clarkson before I knew him. I tried to get after him and landed up fighting a couple other guys. Even Sean Avery when I went after him a couple times, fight like Colt Noor. I don't think I ever really got Patrick Coletta. I grabbed him. I don't know if you remember him for the Buffalo Sabres. He turtled on me. Never really got the guys that I really wanted to fight and actually punch in the face. I was not fighting the guy way tougher than him. I was protecting him, and there was a mutual respect, like I talked about earlier, with those guys. So, but yeah, I think I don't remember ever really fighting mad or angry. It was more just let's do my job and do this in the least emotional way I could possibly do it.
Now let's talk about your Flyers. What do they need to do to regain their championship pedigree that they had and playoff pedigree that they had with almost going into playoffs almost every single year? What do they need to do?
You start scoring some goals. We're gonna get the power play fired up. You gotta play with some more passion. I was at the game yesterday against Carolina. They lost 6-3. They had 2 goals in the first, but they only had 6 shots, and there was a 12-minute period where they didn't get any shots. There's a couple individual efforts that were nice, but there's no team chemistry right now. In my opinion, if Carter Hart wasn't great yesterday, but if Carter Hart hadn't been great the previous 20 games, wherever the hell they're at, they'd be right at the bottom of the league. And they're not too far off right now. So, I don't even know where to start. Scoring, obviously, they got some offensive guys and not scoring goals. I think their defense is somewhat upgraded than it was last year, and they got a couple injuries. No excuses, but there's some clumsy mistakes by a couple of the defensemen. So that's got to tighten up. And again, going back to goaltending, both the goalies, Carter Hart and Martin Jones, have been playing pretty damn good. I mean, you could you could say maybe a couple of games that they were off, but like they're the most consistent players right now. So offense got to get going. Everyone's got to get better. But they're in some trouble if it keeps going this way.
Now, what do you think happens? What do you think is the deal with that? Do you think it's coaching, players? What is it? What's the miscommunication there? And why that happens? Because uh, you guys unfortunately uh, could not win the cup. You guys made the playoffs a couple years there as well in your career, but like, what do you think? What do you think is wrong with the Flyers? Is it because of the coaching this year? What is it? The players are giving up. What do you think is their ultimate problem?
It's it's tough to say. I mean, I feel like on paper they should be better. So if that's the case, then there's a chemistry issue why that's not happening. And this is what his third year, Alain Vigneault. Like I didn't think it was a coaching issue like last year. I'm starting to think that it could be or a disconnection to the message because it's like you've addressed all the issues from last year. You gotten better defensemen. The goaltending is better. Well, not that
Mm-hmm.
it needs necessarily upgraded, but like Carter Hart's better than he was last year, and Martin Jones
Yep.
is equally as good as his backup last year.
Yep.
Um, you upgrade. You mean I say upgrade the forwards? I mean Cam Atkinson is scoring goals, so you exchange him for Jake Voracek. It's pretty much a wash. But but if Cam isn't scoring the way he was at least early on, he'd be maybe complaining. But
Yeah.
like the rest of the guys, they add a little toughness. You got Thompson as a center that's a grinder. You got this McEwen that's throwing some bodies around. Like you got a little toughness. So you've added some of these dimensions. But then like when you see a game like yesterday and some of these other games against Toronto and there's a couple other ones that like they look like shit. Like
Yeah. They're
there's no
losing
energy
against sorry
at
teams.
home.
Yeah.
So it's like if that's the
They're-
case, like why? Why is that? Like is like at least I mean you're gonna lose some games, but at least like lose some games with like some energy. Like
they've got some horrible losses against horrible teams that they should
yeah,
easily
you got some
win.
bad losses, yeah. So and the North Carolina's not a horrible team, but like Toronto, their Toronto early was not very good. They should have beat them. They beat them at they beat them at home. Drawing a blank a couple of the other ones, but so it's looking like what is it like? What are you going to do now? Like you to me in the summer, I know they got two major injuries right now with Ellis and Hayes. Hayes only played a handful of games. Ellis was good early when they were Flyers were like actually winning games, like but looking like a good team. But like after that, like how much movement can you make during a season with players to make the team better? It's like to me, it's like I feel like these coaches have had a long enough time with this team. Like
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. Let's move some up or fire the general manager. You know what I mean? It's like were these were
That's
these
true.
were these moves were these moves good enough? You know what I mean? It's like
He's been
you
with
look.
them a while. Yeah. I haven't seen no improvement from the GM.
I mean, not really. Like I mean, they're quasi upgrades, but like you look around the league, like Carolina's the better team. Florida
Yeah.
is just a better team. Tampa's a better team. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? They snap the puck around. They got these guys, like these really skilled guys that they got good goaltending. Again, that's not the issue with the Flyers. The issue is goaltending. You can't blame it on that. But like, so what is it saying about these other core guys that they have? Like, are they good enough? Like, like you get rid of Gostisbehere. Gostisbehere is leading Arizona in points. The whole team.
Yeah.
The
He
Flyers.
is. The whole team.
So, like, what were these moves that great? Like, or could you have been more patient with Ghost? You get Yandel. Yandel is he's an Iron Man. He's played like 1,000 games straight. He's a highly offensive guy. He's a great player, but then he does throw some pizzas and some soft plays around too. This is the very same thing that they were harping on Gostisbehere for. You know what I mean? He's gonna make mistakes. He's highly offensive, but like that move does not look good now. So besides Ellis, some of these back end moves maybe not that weren't that much of an upgrade at the end of the day, anyways. So I don't know. How much more time do you give a general manager? You know what I mean? The first year you make no moves. he makes some significant moves, but like I don't know. I don't see them being a playoff team the way they're going right now.
I don't see it either. I don't either. So now let's talk about it's early. It's early, and I know there's tons of teams that make playoffs now. I think it's 12 teams make the playoffs now. I want you to give me your top four, which would be 8 teams altogether. Your top 4 teams in each league that will make the playoffs.
In each division or in each
In each league. To your top 4, which would be 8 teams.
in each league
Yeah,
or each division,
each
or each
division. Sorry, yeah,
conference.
each conference. Yeah, each conference.
Well, I mean, Carolina's a good team. Carolina, Washington, Florida, Edmonton, um, the Tampa up there. Toronto's doing better. Calgary's been on fire. I don't know. Pittsburgh, Minnesota quick crush Winnipeg again. I don't know. So those, I mean, but definitely like the Washington, the Tampa, Florida, Carolina. I like Edmonton. I'm just like obsessed with watching Connor's highlights.
Mm-hmm.
Even Calgary has been like on the radar, even down here in like the Philly area. You don't really get a whole lot of Canadian highlights, but you've been seeing Calgary on the map a lot more. So I don't know. And you got some like Flyers are they were at the top of the league and they're like the bottom third percentile now, and I just don't see them being able to elevate their game
I
to any of
don't
those
either.
other mentioned status.
I
So
don't. I don't either. Not the
they'll
way
win
they're
some
playing
games
right
here and there, but they're not going to win like these other teams are winning.
now. No, I don't see it either. Do you think now? Let's talk about my team that's here, where I'm from, the Tampa Bay Lightning. Can you see them three-peating, or is there a team that you see taking them down?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, if you look at the team and the success of them versus all those some of those other teams I just mentioned, they're right in the mix. They're two games off as far as 2 wins off right now. So it's still early in the season. I think they have just a good shot, as good a shot of winning again as any other team. I actually like the way that the team is built. They got again strong goaltending. Yeah, it looked great with Perry. I think you have very defined roles of players, some high caliber players. So I seen them play the Flyers early in the season. Like they're a good team. Like so I wouldn't say no, they can't win it. And I think the only reason that you'd actually root against or say root against them is not say they win again. Is just like what are the chances of a team three-peating? Probably like next to none. So I would go ahead and say they're not going to the Stanley Cup just because there's probably virtually no chance that happens.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, the only reason I'm saying that is because they won 2 in a row. It's like, you know what I mean? So just like you would think that the third year that it would have to be somebody else. So I don't know who. I mean, they're gonna go head to head with Florida and a couple of these other teams, and like I don't know who they're gonna line up playing in the playoffs, but I see them winning at least a round or two in the playoffs. I don't see them getting eliminated in the first round, but they're definitely a playoff team. Um,
Now, is there a surprise team that you see coming up that nobody sees on radar that could make the playoffs?
I don't I don't really
That's
know.
also tough to say too because there's plenty of teams out there, but I can
Yeah,
name a few. But is there one that stands out to you that nobody can see? Usually would think would not make the playoffs, but might sneak in there.
again, I think it's too soon. I mean, I think again, I go back to Calgary. Like, not that I didn't think they were a playoff team, but they certainly surprised me. They're surprising me right now. Again, it's like you don't want to like throw all your stocks into teams this early because a lot can change. Injuries and
Yeah.
certain funks that teams go through and whatnot. But I still like teams like St. Louis that like historically you've been pretty good. In the last few years, and not that would be like a shocker to be in the playoffs because you'd expect them to be in the playoffs. But I think they got another level of their game yet. I think. Um, I don't know, like just some shit, some shitty teams. Like the bottom of the league is like you don't want to be on those teams. Like those are like the rough start at least, and you're not going to get much better. So I don't know. I mean, would I like to see like a team like Buffalo somehow like crack through some amazing sort of like insane story and find their way? Yeah, I think that would be an amazing story. But I just don't. I don't have any in my that that are that I think that are going to make it. You know that shouldn't make it. But obviously, it's gonna be a grind right to the last game of the season where there's gonna be a battle. But I think those teams that we're talking about, like, you expect them to be in that fight towards the end, anyways. It's not gonna be overly much of a shocker.
2 more questions before I let you go, so we can you can go do your thing. I know you got kids just like I do.
Mhm.
So question 1 is the Kraken, the new
Yep.
team, expansion
Mhm.
team. What do you think of them so far? I know it's early. Again, like we talked about, it's early. What do you think about that atmosphere up there? I know you've seen a couple of their games. I have too. Do you think they can do anything?
I don't think so. I saw them play the Flyers earlier this year, and again, I know it was really early, maybe 4 or 5 games in. They had nothing. Like they hung in the game. They hung in. It's like they were working hard. And Dave Axtell's the coach there, so I want to check it out. And I think he's a good coach, but I don't think they have enough firepower there. Like again, they're buzzing. They're kind of working, but like if the Flyers can't score, like these guys aren't going to score much.
Mm,
Um, that being said, franchise, like they're trying their best, to brand and stay relevant and have some fun with it. But I don't see them doing a whole lot. I definitely don't think they're gonna make playoffs.
I agree.
but but
I
it's
agree.
expansion. What are you gonna do? I mean, but that being said, too, I mean, I guess not too long ago, Vegas was an expansion. They somehow landed up being in the finals. Um,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well,
but
who
yeah, I
knows?
think they got a lot of work to do. They struggle with scoring, like a lot of teams do. Chicago
So
Islanders.
now my last question to you is, since we did talk about your podcast earlier, who are you going to have on next? Who are you eyeing next? And what will we expect from it?
Well, it's going to be between two guys. Well, they're going to be the next two. I'm just not sure which one is going to be next. Bernie Perrant, Hall of Fame Broad Street Bully goaltenders, 2 Stanley Cups back in the day. Him, and then current center, I mentioned him earlier, Nate Thompson for the Flyers. Supposed to be recording with him. I actually read somewhere where he might have got hurt last night or yesterday's game because it's an afternoon game. So we'll see where that goes. But those are the next two that are teed up. Bernie on
Very
Monday.
nice.
I'm assuming Bernie. It's going to be Bernie for episode 51.
Very nice. Can't wait to hear it. Can't wait to see
Yeah.
it because I'm subscribed to it. Got it on the pod. Can't wait to hear it either. It's going to be fun. Uh, before we head out, uh, tell us where anybody can follow you at, where you're at, and everything else that you've got going on.
Yeah, you can check out my website. It's rileycote.com. And then I'm on social media, Instagram, rileycote32. Same thing for Twitter, rileycote32. And then I'm on LinkedIn as well, and Facebook, all those awesome platforms. Um, Shoot me a DM, whatever. Say what's up.
Perfect. Awesome. Couldn't have said it better. I'm glad you came on. Thanks for your time. It was fun. Come on as many times as you want. I'll text you. I'll even send you a copy of the episode. And yeah, it was fun sharing pods. I'll
Thank
be
you.
tuning in, and I hope you tune into mine as well.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, Byron.
All right, no problem. You have a good night, all right?
Yeah, you too. Later.
Take care. All right, bye.